so I'm working entirely arse about face here today because this is an addendum for a video which is going to follow on from the addendum. I know it's not supposed to work that way. That isn't how addendums work. Well, it fucking is. In this case, because this addendum follows on from a conversation that I had with my wife after I'd recorded the video yesterday. And just the simple fact that it follows on from a conversation with my wife makes it paramount in importance, paramount in prioritising information. But I also think seriously that it's perhaps in some ways the bit that I want to get across more than anything else. And it deals with prioritization of information. And it doesn't matter what kind of information we're talking about. The video that follows deals with information, deals with the kind of arguments people are saying. What's the point telling people that X is wrong if they already have heard that X is wrong? What's the point telling people what X consists of if they already know what X consists of? What's the point telling people that X will make them safer when they're already well aware that X makes them safer? I suggest to you that just as I'm prioritising this information over the rest of the video, we prioritise information all the time. Companies know that with their products, their brand awareness. They don't just want us to see an advert once. No, we need to see the adverts and the product placements for their product more than we do for the competitors' products, because that kind of raises our esteem level of their products. It must be a premium product because it is advertised so heavily. What I suggest is that we view moral guidance, legal information, safety, personal safety, safety of our possessions, all this information we view in the same kind of way. We have an expectation, do we not, that if something is really important, if it's really an important thing that we ought to be knowing about, that society is going to tell us about it again and again and again, because that is what society does with important pieces of information. And in fact, if we only come across a piece of information very rarely, then the chances are that we can kind of scale that one. Where are we going to put that in the scale of how important that is in terms of safety advice, which we're overwhelmed with, or moral guidance, which we're overwhelmed with? If we only hear about it now and again, we're going to place it right down the bottom. My wife comes from a teaching background. She said as part of the conversation, one thing teachers never do is assume that just because the pupils already know something, that there's no need to tell them about it again. What you do is, if you really want them to know it, you tell them again and again and again. You tell them every year, and if you can, you tell them in different ways. Different people tell them in different situations. Well, that's all I wanted to say. That's the end of the addendum. Now on with the main body of the video. Somebody made a comment to me today. I'll read you it out as a bit of an entree into the rest of this video. People are not being told time and time again to lock their cars, you know. I'll come back to that comment in a minute. There are two sort of arguments that have been doing the rounds amidst this general melee of talk on rape and sexual assault. One has been to do with personal safety on the one side, and the other has to do with issues of consent and understanding what sexual assaults actually consist of, what constitutes a sexual assault. And the line that I've heard time and time again, and unlike some of the bad arguments because you always get really bad arguments or really badly phrased arguments, these arguments have been made by all the protagonists, all the hardest hitters, whether it's a Thunderfoot or a PZ Myers or a Mike Booth or an Ashley Paramore or a Rebecca Watson, whoever it is, this argument always seems to surface, and I think it's universally wrong. I can't put it any simpler than that. It's wrong and naive, and surprisingly naive given the calibre of people that are making the argument. I want to give you a bit of a personal perspective on that and tie it into this idea that the police aren't constantly telling people make sure you lock your car. Something I talk about now and again in comments, whether it's relevant. I don't tend to talk about in videos is my occupation. I work for the UK Fire Service. I have for 18 years. For 18 years, I've been a firefighter. When I joined 18 years ago, we were largely, almost exclusively reactive. Throughout that period, we have become more and more proactive. Of course, we're still reactive. If you have a fire, if you're trapped in your car, if there's a chemical spill, we still attend those things. But we try and do more. We try and do things to stop people having accidents in their car, to stop them burning their homes down, to make sure they get out of their homes if their homes catch fire, rather than getting caught out by the fire. With regard to domestic fires, probably the key piece of information, and I won't be telling you something you don't already know, is to make sure you've got smoke detectors fitted and to make sure that they work. I'm going to make a bit of a gamble here, but that is that everybody who watches this video has heard that piece of advice 100 times probably, at least. Somebody's told you it on the television, a friend has told you it, you maybe heard it at school, you've heard it as an adult, you've heard it all the stages in between, you've seen it in a newspaper, in a magazine, on the television, on an advert perhaps for fire safety, or on a television programme. You've driven past a billboard with it, or a bill poster, you've walked past every day, maybe seen that poster a dozen times. My guess is that everybody who watches this video will have seen that 100 times. So obviously the position of the UK Fire Service is we don't bother giving that advice anymore because everybody's had that piece of advice 100 times. In fact, that isn't the position of the UK Fire Service. The position is that we give you it 101st time and 102nd time and 103rd time. And this was my naivety. When we started doing this kind of thing in the brigade that I work for, I had this idea, what's the point giving this advice? Everybody knows you should get a fire detector, a smoke detector, a smoke alarm. Everybody should make sure you have smoke alarms fitted and that they work. They've all been told it so many times. What's the point telling them again? The point is that miraculously, telling people for that 101st time still makes a difference. It really does make a difference over that 100th telling, and the 102nd telling gets a few more people on board than the 101st telling. And this naive idea that just because people have been told something already, that it's sunk in, that it's took account of it, that they don't need telling again, that some people don't need telling ad infinitum at regular intervals for their rest of their natural life, is just wrong. Police forces do tell people, they make it their business to tell people, and they never stop telling people, they never stop running campaigns telling people to make sure to lock your car, to make sure to lock your door, to make sure that you do all these different things for your safety and for the safety of your belongings. In the fire service, we are exactly the same. So whichever kind of an argument you have a problem with, whether it's giving people advice on their personal safety, perhaps in the kind of relationships they have, or the kind of places that they go late at night that could affect their ability to suffer a violent or sexual assault, or whether it's to do with issues of what constitutes consent, which surely everybody must have heard these things before. How could they possibly benefit from seeing or reading or hearing these things again? Well, then I've got to tell you, from somebody who was naive on this issue themselves and was proven absolutely wrong on the issue, what you're actually doing is overestimating the common man or woman in the street. Work from the principle that some people will have heard the advice and are too stupid to have understood it. Work from the principle that some people have heard the advice but they're too lazy to have understood it. I don't care what principle you work from, there is always some benefit for giving out good advice. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for watching. Have a good night. Bye for now.